After the gravitas of Avengers Infinity War, which ended in a blaze of glory only for the villain, what did we want next? A fun, lighthearted romp of a movie, right? No? Well, that's what we got, and this movie is certainly fun, but it doesn't resolve a single thread from Infinity War. This week, in another episode of our former Patreon show, Tim Catches Up with the MCU, Mulele struggles to avoid spoiling Endgame for me as he and I take a close-up look at 2018's Ant-Man and the Wasp. This episode was originally published on Patreon on February 1st, 2020. First, don't forget to take our listener survey to help us improve the show. Allow 5 to 10 minutes to finish it. The link is in the show notes. Welcome to Tim Catches Up with the MCU. This is Tim in Tokyo with Mulele. How you doing?
I'm good. And you?
Okay. Still coughing somewhat, but trying to kill off the dust mites in my apartment. And I'm actually this movie is going to give me a reason to come back to the dust mites. But we were talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, which of course comes right after Infinity War, which has got to be the heaviest of the movies up to this point. And going into this one, I was kind of thinking, like, it was sort of strange that they went to this after Infinity War. But I guess, well, looking at what others had said about it, there was this kind of feeling, and I guess a feeling by the producers as well, that it would be good to have a light movie after that.
I can see that.
And yeah, so that makes sense. And this was quite a bit of fun to watch, I thought. And it seemed like I agreed with a lot of the critics who thought that this was better than the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To be honest, I don't remember the first one all that well.
I just saw it a few months ago, and I've already forgotten.
Yeah. That is kind of a testament to how good it was.
Although the beginning of this movie was really good at reminding me what happened. Like, oh yes, okay, I know where we are. Okay.
Yeah. But for me, the high point of the first movie was the Michael Pena stuff, and he's telling the story, and everybody's kind of retelling their part in the story according to his style of speaking. That was hilarious to me, and they did a little bit of it in this one too, and I quite like that. Now, the director who took over for what's his name? The
I just read it, and I was going to remember.
Yeah.
Let me scroll back in Wikipedia here.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright, yeah. He's not credited on this movie.
Yeah, he's not credited with this one, but he was the original director and the person who developed Ant-Man in the first place.
Right, I kind of remember that he had this certain idea that he'd had for quite a while, and then when he started to direct it, he found that he was being pushed into making it link up with the other movies, and he didn't want to, so he bailed.
Yeah, well, I mean, he had been actively developing it since before Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a long haul. He's basically a founding member at that point. But yeah, Kevin Feige doesn't play nice with others, as we keep finding out. But
yeah, I saw that Peyton Reed was, I guess he normally hasn't done sequels, but he really enjoyed this group of characters and was excited about being able to do this movie and be involved from the beginning.
Yeah. So in a way, he's not really breaking his own rules. He's just kind of doing a full movie by himself this time. It is a better film. It's in that it's more cohesive. There's nothing too wild, nothing too. Also, I like the fact that it's not just another exact same as you, but tougher or with lasers or any of that stuff. That was kind of the same as Iron Man. I think we complained about that in that podcast. But
this movie reminded me, in a good way, of 1970s Disney live-action comedies. You know,
why?
like The Cat from Outer Space or something like that. It just, for some reason, it had that kind of feeling to it for me.
Huh. I mean, I saw those movies when I was a kid, but I that and I think Escape from Witch Mountain or something like that. But
right, well, that wasn't really a comedy. I do remember that one. I saw it in the theater, but when I was like 9.
yeah.
But yeah, just somehow it had that kind of manic feeling that those movies had. Boy, let's see, where should I go with my notes here?
Partridge Family?
Well, yeah, the theme from the Partridge Family pops up in here.
but why, though?
I don't know. Why not, I guess.
I guess, but...
But I liked how the story was put together with, like, not just 2 camps, but 3 camps competing against each other.
Yeah.
And that really paid off in that chase scene, which just made it a lot more interesting, I thought, rather than just, A and B going back and forth, but you got C jumping in and grabbing the shrunken lab.
Yeah. I thought that was actually quite clever, and I it's part of what I liked about this film over the last film. I don't know that everybody agrees, because there are some people who are saying that the director should not come back for a 4th or a 3rd installment. I don't know, but I mean, as far as the Marvel films go, this is not the worst of them, but this is definitely not the best of them. And like you said at the beginning of the podcast, after Infinity War, why this one? This is kind of light, but yeah, maybe that's what they're going for. But it is really, really light. And to be honest, having just come off of Infinity War, it's like, oh shit, my mind is broken. And then I've got to readjust myself to this lighthearted comedy. And then at the end of this film, we're reminded that all of that other stuff did happen, and now it's affecting this film.
Yeah, and I had a feeling that was going in that somehow it was going to refer to Infinity War late in the movie. Turns out to be in the mid-credit scene, and I guess kind of the post-credit scene too, because the TV is a test pattern.
Yeah,
as the ant is drumming.
Yeah, but I kind of how can I say? I felt that I'm trying to avoid spoilers for future films.
Okay,
but I did not like the way this film fit in with the overall the larger narrative. And I understand that you've only seen up until this point, so you don't know exactly how it fits in. But this film would have been great before Infinity War.
Yeah, I guess the reason I thought it was weird to have it here was because after Infinity War, we just want to know what happens next, and this movie is not giving us that at all. It's a completely different story that just kind of ends at the same point in time that Infinity War ended.
Well, we have 2 questions at the end of Infinity War. Number one, how the fuck are they going to get out of this one? And number 2, who's Captain Marvel?
Right.
Not who or what the character is, but like who's the actor or actress, who is or what is this going to be? How is that person going to save them? What exactly is coming? I
think a lot of people would have, not even been able to ask that question necessarily. Just, who did Fury call, or what was that thing? They might not have even. I heard, anecdotal evidence that people saw that and didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, that as well. My point is just that our mind is set in that direction, and then we have this film which answers none of that and says, "Oh, but it happened here too." But am I to believe that there was a spaceship that came down and plowed through half of New York, also parts of Europe and Africa, where there was a giant war with these ships? Meanwhile, San Francisco is completely oblivious to that thing because they got their own little thing happening, and then suddenly people start turning to dust. And that's when they realized.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt like there should have been a point where stuff started to get really, really weird as characters in the story started to realize that something else was happening somewhere else that was more important than the little bullshit they were doing here.
Well, but I think, between the end of the actual movie and then the first, the mid-credit scene, we don't know how much time goes by. Apparently some time has gone by because they've put together that the tunnel in the, what was it, a van or something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But even so, I still think that there's an opportunity that's kind of missed, because if we look at this narrative, we've got Chase the MacGuffin story type. And if, with all the Chase the MacGuffin stories that we've had in the Marvel Universe, or the bad guy beats the good guy beats the big bad guy, in this case, the woman with the weird powers, or the weird quantum phasing problem, they could have completely destroyed that narrative in the middle, taken a left turn as this other thing started to come into focus, and that would have been much more interesting. And it would have really brought Scott Lang into kind of the situation. So I kind of feel like they missed something there. Instead of this being absolutely its own film, and then here's a little add-on, I would have liked to have seen more.
Maybe. I'm not sure I completely agree with you, though. I'm not sure that would have been an improvement. I guess it depends on what you want, but I think they were going for a self-contained movie, except for the credit sequences. And I think if some people might not want this to to depend on them having seen other movies, except for the original Ant-Man movie, and maybe Civil War. I guess it depends on some movies already, but I don't know. I think it just depends on what you want. But I think doing it this way didn't bother me.
Okay.
By the way, that chase scene, I was amazed to learn that it was filmed in Atlanta, and all the San Francisco stuff was put in digitally.
Interesting.
That's amazing. It looked like it was filmed in San Francisco.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Well, I mean, I grew up in San Francisco, so all of those locations I know. And yeah, it's accurate for what it needs to be. And as they kind of go through the car chase, there are some points where it jump cuts through the city, but I mean, that's every film. I think the only film to really get into a chase in San Francisco is the movie Bullet.
Okay.
They filmed that shit without permits, I'm sure. Because there's a scene in the middle of that where Steve McQueen is driving his hot rod and he's trying to chase the bad guys, and this taxi driver pulls in front of them, and they start to have a little bit of a fighting match or a shouting match through their cars, just as Steve McQueen pulls away. So that's not scripted. That was just some like off the cuff or real situation that happened. Quite amazing. If you want a really interesting film, watch that one. This one, of course, yeah, it's all digital. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, though it felt like, and I mean, this has been kind of my hobby horse going through these movies, but some of the supporting characters felt like they came up with the characters, and then they tried to kind of match them up with Marvel Comics characters, even if they didn't quite fit.
But you mean
So I mean,
like
every character has a more or less analog in the comics.
right?
Sonny Birch is I wasn't familiar with him, but he was actually I mean, he's a crook, but he's a crook in the government in the comics. Ghost, I know Ghost, but Ghost is male in the comics and a somewhat different kind of character.
Right.
Jimmy Woo is not so goofy in the comics.
To be honest, I didn't mind Jimmy Woo. I thought he was actually he's kind of okay, except for that last little bit at the end where he's asking Scott Lang out on a date, and it just kind of the surprise sexuality twist seemed to kind of throw the character into a different area of my mind, and also kind of was an insult to the character. It just showed him up to be a lonely guy looking for any kind of human contact, and the most he can get is arresting this guy again. I mean, that's really, really sad. I mean, I thought he was fun and a little goofy, but that was just sad. By the way, I said in our review of the first one that I liked the new guy who's a cop who is now with Scott Lang's daughter and ex-wife. Yeah, I forget his name, but I really appreciated how good of a person he is. He was kind of playing, maybe he's a good guy, maybe he's a bad guy in the first film, but in this film he's all supportive, and even at the end of the adventure, the way he runs up and hugs Scott Lang and his daughter and his ex-wife, and it was a big family hug. So there's I guess a new dynamic there as far as what the family is or what the family means, and I kind of like that.
Yeah,
it reflects a positive reality that is very often portrayed as negative. So, just enjoyed it.
Okay, that's actor is Bobby Cannavale as Jim Paxton.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of things, but he was in The Irishman most recently. He's actually quite excellent as an actor. But I mean, before, when I first saw him as an actor, it was in Boardwalk Empire, in which he has a full frontal nude scene, and it's like, so you went from that to this kid's film. I mean, that's quite a switch, but hey, it's all good. I do like the character in this film, and I like the character in that TV show as well.
I did find, maybe early on especially, I felt a little annoyed by the movie because it was so obvious that things were being set up. Scott say, I've just got 3 more days of house arrest, easy peasy, and you know that it's not going to be easy. I mean, it's just not. Otherwise, there's no movie. And, there are always, things that, in actual life probably wouldn't have gone off too difficult, but, there always has to be some kind of roadblock and some kind of, setback. It gets a little predictable, but after a while I just kind of got into it and it all worked for me. But the beginning I was like, yeah, okay, we know it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Stan's cameo, we have often not talked about the Stan Lee cameos, was funny, but I'm noticing as we go through these, every cameo, he looks a little older and a little less well.
Actually, the Captain Marvel cameo was his last official cameo. Was it?
Well, no, I looked it up. I guess he's in Endgame.
He kind of is. But but also, I think he was kind of in Spider-Man. I don't remember exactly, but
like a picture of him or something.
No. I think he might have. But the last one he did film was in Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Um, as far as I know, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard that somewhere. And yeah, in Captain Marvel, he looks really, really weak. He's just barely hanging on to his lines in the film.
Hmm.
It was a cute callback because I saw Mallrats. At least I think that was the script that he was reading. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I couldn't remember, but yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think he was a mall security guard, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think I'm not sure if that was his first cameo in film or what, but yeah, it was an early Kevin Smith one, and he was until I guess sometime last year he was very far up Stanley's ass, but yeah, he does look kind of weak in this film too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Edward and Alphonse Elric, as a result of attempting the forbidden act of resurrecting their mother with alchemy, have paid the price. Edward lost an arm and a leg. Alphonse lost his whole body, his soul now attached to a suit of armor. Together they search for a way to make their bodies complete again and uncover a deadly plot by their country's military rulers. That's the concept of Hiromu Arakawa's Fullmetal Alchemist, one of the best manga ever made. Tim and Patrick are rereading Arakawa's masterwork in search of interesting sound effects, translation errors, goofy humor, and, oh yeah, a great story. The podcast is The Law of Equivalent Exchange, a chapter-by-chapter look at the manga Fullmetal Alchemist. New episodes every other Monday, wherever podcasts are found. What are you willing to exchange? Now, I don't remember if this happened in the first Ant-Man 2 or not, but I was really struck in this one by how they employed the size changing during fight scenes. They're like, abruptly getting smaller and then bigger right away, just to make someone's punch miss or something. And I realized that idea felt unfamiliar to me because I don't think they've ever done it in the comics. It would be kind of hard to do in the comics.
Yeah.
It's something that works much better on film. With comics, you'd need way too many panels, and it would make it seem to take, 30 seconds, where it takes a lot less when you watch it.
Yeah, well, American comics, at least the generation of comics that I read, I don't know what they're doing these days, seem to have a very simplistic 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of choreography to its fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things coming over to Japan, you often have a page full of panels that all happen at the same time. Like you have the connecting punch and then 3 reactions surrounding that panel.
Mm-hmm.
To that punch. And so they happen at the same time, but I don't see that too much in American comics. There's the punch, there's the counter punch, then the guy straddles up and says, oh my God, they're fighting. And then another punch. But there's very much a one after the other sequence.
Yeah, it's very linear, where with manga, they might have simultaneous panels.
Yeah, often simultaneous. Then there's that famous punch from Ashita no Joe, which takes 18 pages, but that's another thing. Yeah, so I think this stuff you couldn't really do, or no one would have thought to have gone to that extreme, unless you've got, in this age, I can imagine some comic book artist saying, okay, give me a graphic novel with Ant-Man and I will do these crazy fight scenes, and here's a taste. And they have this one page with 50 panels on it, and he's doing all sorts of shit and flying through and all of the stuff that we saw in the film. I could see that happening. Mm-hmm. I just don't think anybody's done it yet. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I haven't read a comic with Ant-Man in it in many years. I'm sure there are some out there, but I don't read that many comics these days. I'm too busy talking about comics on the podcast.
Yeah, right.
Oh, so I mentioned dust mites.
Yeah.
About the same size as dust mites are tardigrades, and we saw some
Yeah.
as Hank was starting to shrink to go to the quantum realm.
Yeah.
Almost got eaten by a tardigrade. So
Yeah.
I thought that was nice. Nice bit of accuracy there. Yep, tardigrades. Yep. I would have liked to seen some dust mites in that scene too, but because I looked it up and they're about the same length. They're both about 0.5 millimeter long.
Okay, it seemed to me that he was a bit smaller than 0.5 millimeter.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Hank's ship had shrunk to a size where it was pretty small to a tardigrade, I think.
Yeah, it had, but I mean, seeing some of the other like particles of whatever floating behind the tardigrades, it kind of looked like they were on some sort of subatomic level, but I don't know.
Well, that's true.
But whatever. The tardigrades were cool. I dig them. They use them better here than they did in Star Trek.
In Star Trek, okay, I don't.
Oh, sorry. That would be STD.
That's the new one.
Yeah, Star Trek Discovery.
Okay, so STD means something else also. So,
well, apparently people feel the same about this show.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything good about it.
No, and they made it to season 3 somehow.
Good to see Michelle Pfeiffer again.
Man, at 61, she is gorgeous.
Yeah.
That's all I could. I mean, it's like, no, I'm sorry. Angeline Lilly, you're not pretty enough to be her daughter. So I'm not buying it for a second.
But I saw, in the Wikipedia, it said because Michelle Pfeiffer has aged so well, it was easy to do de-aging sequences.
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling. The de-aging at the beginning of the film, it looked better on her than it looked on fuck, my mind is melting.
Michael Douglas.
Thank you.
And Lawrence Fishburne. They did on him also.
Yeah, he looked kind of puffy.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't that puffy. I mean, at that age, he was playing Morpheus.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe a little bit before that age.
Yeah, I think the Wikipedia said that they were kind of getting the images from movies that he did like in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah, so late 90s. 99 would be Matrix,
yeah.
And then the films he did before. He did a couple of films. Some of them I even like, but I can't remember the names of them.
Let's see here. Mentions Boys in the Hood and Deep Cover.
Yeah, Deep Cover is the one that I liked. It's a fun movie because it's him and Jeff Goldblum as drug dealers. And, Jeff Goldblum. who is also in Marvel. So
right, yeah, in Ragnarok. Yeah.
Anyway, man. So in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where does this film fit for you? I mean, are you satisfied with it? Does it rank high or low?
I would put it pretty high. I don't know. I haven't been keeping a really strict rating because it's getting difficult with so many films now.
Just generally, is this an Iron Man 2, or is this a Captain America Civil War for you?
The other thing that makes it a little difficult to rate is the kind of differences in tone and gravity. But I think I would put it in my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever my top 10 are at this point.
Right. What's your top 3?
Oh, boy. I'm not sure the order, but maybe... Infinity War and Civil War and I'm not sure what the other one would be. First Avengers or or Winter Soldier, or possibly I don't know if I'd put the first Guardians that high. But yeah, those were some of my favorites.
Okay.
So I don't think this one would be quite that high, but certainly in the top 10, maybe top 6 or 7.
So for you, this film was a lot of fun, and you really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, it's more of a goof, not really something that I can not something that makes me pause eating my popcorn because it's just so good.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it doesn't have much gravity to it. It's certainly not an Infinity War. It's the exact opposite of that. And so it makes it a little hard to compare. I almost would have preferred, I mean, yeah, if they had placed it in a different place and then just not had any Infinity War reference at all, might have been better for me. Just make it more self-contained.
It's weird because it's almost a palate cleanser after an Infinity War, but we're going to go right back into that with the Endgame film when we review that. I mean, when the films came out, I guess there was a year and change between Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah, about a year.
Yeah, so this film coming out, what was the time difference between Ant-Man and Endgame, or sorry, Infinity War?
Well, let me see here. I do have that Wikipedia page up. So first, Ant-Man, July 17th, 2015. And so this one came out in July 2018. So 3 years between the two Ant-Mans.
Right. But
and go ahead.
Yeah, between Infinity War and Ant-Man 2.
So Infinity War came out April 27th of 2018. So just a little over 2 months.
Yeah, and my mind was still reeling from Infinity War. And I think everybody was still kind of in shock with that ending. But this acting as a palate cleanser, and then after that having Captain Marvel, it's a weird place to put these films.
Yeah, well, and I saw what one of the reviewers that's quoted on Wikipedia was assuming that Captain Marvel would bring us back into the story left from Infinity War, which it absolutely didn't, because it was set before any of the other movies in the series.
Yeah.
But it was just sort of, I guess, to set up Captain Marvel to be in Endgame.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had nothing to do with Endgame except for the mid-credit sequence.
Yeah.
And then Endgame was actually, April 26, 2019, so exactly 52 weeks after Infinity War. So it was quite a while between this movie and Captain Marvel, July to March. What's that, about 8 months? 8 months. So, although that's shorter than the gap between Far From Home and Black Widow. It's incredibly long. Well, let's see, what is it? 10 months.
Yeah, I think people are looking at Phase 4 as a fresh start, so to speak.
I mean, what else can you do after the saga of Infinity War and Endgame? Yeah,
but I mean, the thing is, you got a bunch of legacy characters who are kind of launching this new thing. And so I wonder how much they're going to reference the first 22 films.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I would think that there would be some sort of passing references, but it may not be. You may not really need to have seen the earlier ones, unless it's like a sequel, like Black Panther 2 or something.
Well, so far in the promotional material for Black Widow, none of the Infinity War stuff or Endgame stuff is referenced. So I'm guessing it's a prequel of sorts.
And that could be. Yeah, the trailer I saw, there were no other familiar faces from the other movies in it.
Well, she goes back to her homeland, so I guess there wouldn't be. The Russian version of Captain America was the Captain Russia, her father.
I'm not sure.
He puts on the mask and says, "Yeah, it still fits." And his wife says, "Oh, you got fat." You don't remember that?
Yeah, I saw some guy in a costume. I don't remember the details of it now.
Yeah, it's
But
David Harper.
okay,
He played Hellboy in the last go around.
okay.
That movie was really fucking bad. Stay away. Just see cats instead.
That bad, huh?
Well, I mean, Hellboy 1 and 2 I liked. This new one is like, geez, why? Anyway, so for this, at the end of this film, how do you feel about what's coming up? What's coming next?
Well, yeah, I mean, I get, with the that mid-credit sequence. I mean, I guess it adds one more kind of cliffhanger to be resolved in Endgame, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But of course, I've seen the next one. I'm going to be viewing it for the second time when we do our next episode. So I know what happens there as well as I can remember anyway. But yeah, I'm wondering, there is a third Ant-Man planned, probably to be released in 2022. But I'm wondering what that's going to be. There's been some discussion, I guess, of doing a prequel with a de-aged Michael Douglas, and I guess Michelle Pfeiffer. But I don't know if that's the plan or not. They won't start filming until about a year from now.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're doing with that. I mean, like a lot of Phase 4 stuff is kind of super secret.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like every time we ask about Marvel, they start talking about Star Wars. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to all of it, and I'll be there to watch the films until they're so bad I can't stand it anymore. I mean, I'm getting close to that with Star Wars at this point. We talked about Star Wars last time, but Marvel hasn't hit that yet. And because it hasn't hit that, and it's gone 22 films strong, and it's all based on material that was pre-existing but has its own original flair to it, they want him to do the same thing with Star Wars. That's the only reason why he's in. Can you lay some golden eggs for Star Wars?
Well, I'm kind of hopeful that now that the 9-episode Star Wars saga is over, that maybe they can come up with something fresh and it'll be better than any of the movies that have come out after the original 3.
Well, actually, watch The Mandalorian. That one has more Star Wars in it than the movies. And actually is so inclusive as to include references to all the movies, except for 7, 8, and 9, because it predates them, as far as where it is in the timeline. Yeah. And also references the holiday special. Quite a few times, actually. But it does it with a lot of love. And this is the thing that I really enjoyed about The Mandalorian, is that it acknowledges everything. It's all one universe. Yeah, it's there. But we don't have to follow that same tone. We don't have to do that. We're doing something else. And that was fine. We don't have to rewrite or ignore certain parts of canon or declare something non-canon, so we can start fresh and hope people don't pay attention to that stuff over there. It acknowledges and embraces all of it, which I found really nice.
Okay.
Yeah, and it does a good job on its own, so yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're so far off in the weeds, we should just wrap this up.
Probably, yeah.
So Captain Marvel will be next, and thanks for listening, and thank you, Malele.
Thank you. See you next time.
If you're enjoying this podcast, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics, and go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on X, Facebook, or YouTube. Via our site, you can also shop on Amazon to support the show and find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode there or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. In the show notes, you'll find a link to our listener survey. We'd really appreciate it if you could take 5 to 10 minutes to give us your opinions of Deconstructing Comics. Next week, in a brand new episode, Kumar and I discuss volumes 9 and 10 of Kentaro Miura's Berserk. Just what genre does this series fall into anyway? Why is the comic both fun and frustrating? At least the extended flashback sequence is finally giving us some answers to the questions raised in the early volumes. We'll discuss all of that next week on Deconstructing Comics. Till then, this is Tim. Thanks for listening.